what I'm doing. All the way down. So let's say if I bring this all the way up to G C G C E.
E flat, yeah, E flat, I think it is. G, C, G, E flat is C minor tuning, I think.
Well, I've never even used that tuning before, but
There's a little,
it's the same for any tuning. You're just you're thinking about it as a number of frets, and what I like to do is instead of standard G tuning, I like to tune it to standard F, let's say. So you're dropping things
yeah,
just a couple of frets, but I can just to show you how I would do it if I was going to that tuning. I'll get into that tuning as quickly as I can. So I'm all the way up and coming all the way up to G C G C.
E flat, I think it is.
One knob is loose on me. I'm gonna break a rule here and tighten it with a pocket knife. Man, the sucker wants to slip on me. Don't ever tune up this high, hardly. So let's say I'm just going to go from GC, GCD. It's the same process, and I'm going to hold this peg because it doesn't want to stay up this high. So if I wanted to drop tune this to where I could actually sing with it, because right now it's too high for me, the first thing I would do is go to this bass string. Ooh. So that's a little high. I need that bass string to be bottomed out to the lowest note that I can comfortably sing. So I'm going to drop that bass string. First thing I'm going to do with any tuning. For me. If for you, I mean, if you need to go higher than G, I suggest you get into capos and stuff. A lot of you can probably sing in G or F. I think most people seem to be in that range. So I'll just drop it down a couple of frets, which means usually in the neighborhood of the lowest note that I can sing. Oh, 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 that's getting there. Mo, oh. Let's say that's my bottom end. So then there's like a code that I can either think of it as a numeric code or a visual pattern. I just think of it as a visual pattern. But the numeric code would be you're coming on the bass string to get this back into that C arrangement. You're going to note your bass string at the 7th fret. So your first number is 7. And then you're going to drop your next string down, which is your 3rd string. You're going to make that 3rd string match that note, noted at the 7th fret. You got quite a bit of dropping to do. So I'm close. So the next number is going to be 5. The next string down is your 3rd string. So you're going to go to your 3rd string, your 5th fret, and you're going to get this note. And you want your 2nd string to match that note. So you got to drop that 2nd string. Hear how they sound the same? I don't know how this is all sounding to y'all, but hopefully it's sounding like something. So far we have 7 and 5. The next code to get the C pattern is is 2. So your second string at the second fret. You got to drop that first string. Doesn't sound right, right? So just go through once and get it close. So the code that we just did for this to get into double C tuning, G, C, G, C, D, was 7, 5, 2. And then if you want to tune your 5th string, just go back to the 5. So that's the 5th fret on the 1st string to get your thumb peg. So I'm in a tuning now that resembles double C, but it's much lower. And if we turn on our tuner, we can, what did I do? How far did I go? So I dropped it all pretty extremely low, probably lower than I can comfortably sing. So I'm down in like D sharp or something. Anyhow, so then it gets tricky from there. You said that the first string has been dropped to an E flat or raised to an E flat from D.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the way you would do that is, so E flat is just 1 fret up from E, right? So, or from D, sorry. So the way you would, this is kind of getting tricky, but so instead of fretting your second string at the 2nd fret, fret your 2nd string at the 3rd fret, and I believe this is going to get us there. That sounds like C minor. So the code to get to C minor is going to be on your 4th string, go to the 7th fret. On the 3rd string, go to your 5th fret. On the 2nd string, go to your 3rd fret. And then on your 1st string, to get the thumb peg, I believe you're going to go to your 6th fret. Or you're going to go to your 4th fret. I don't know, just twist your thumb peg around to where it sounds right, whatever. But we got the code figured out there. So that gets you in this weird C minor tuning, which believe it or not, I don't believe I've ever used this tuning.
Song called Little Sadie.
Cool. I'll have to mess around with it. Do you know who played it in that tuning? Where'd you get that from? That's cool.
Yeah, I think I got it from Wayne Erbson, playing a song called Little Sadie.
Okay, Wayne Erbson.
And the claw hammer, for dummies or whatever.
Uh-huh. Cool.
Or ignoramus.
C minor. When I hear that, it makes me think of, what was her name? Karen Dalton. She played a song called Katie Cruel, which is a really old song. Sounds like you could play Katie Cruel in this tune. Call me Katie, call me Katie, or something like that. You could definitely play Katie Cruel in that tuning. Cool. That was cool, Ed. Has anybody else got a subject?
Can I ask a
Sure.
So I guess what I don't quite understand, this is kind of a follow-up, is your 4th string, no matter what key you're emulating, is it always at the lowest singable note, or do you let's say you wanted to go from the equivalent of G to double C, you'd lower the 4th string. Do you do that when you already have your 4th string in the lowest singable note, or do you just always leave it there and then adjust everything else?
So the short answer is no, I don't stick to that rule, because that would be kind of, especially you could do it at home and stuff, but if you're playing on stage or something, that's a lot of tuning. So you want to try to not retune so much, right? So I kind of have got those habits from performing and stuff, and just trying to be polite to listeners, not always retuning. So the short answer is no. Long answer is if I were to find myself already bottomed out on that bass string like I am now, I couldn't really sing that bass string any lower than it is now. And I wanted to go, if I was already in like a standard arrangement, I wanted to go to a drop bass arrangement like you're asking. At that point, if I wanted to, really, I would need to then retune all the other strings, raise them up higher. And you can kind of, like right now, I'm really low. And I can raise this tuning really quickly by just repeating the code again. I can raise it up another step, another couple of frets. So I can fret my bass string again at the 7th fret. I'm sorry, the trick I'm trying to show you is instead, if you wanted to just go up another, like right now we're here at the 7th fret, you could just raise it up. Like, let's see, I'm lost now because I'm in this weird tuning. I want to get back to double C, so I'm going to hold the 2nd string at the 2nd fret. And I'm going to drop my 1st string to match that. So it's kind of tricky but there's just ways around it, basically, is what I'm trying to say. You would have to retune all your other strings. If I was already bottomed out and I wanted to go any lower, I would rearrange by striking that 1st string, which is sort of a relative D, and then I would bring my bass string back up to match that D string. So I've now gone up a full measure back up to where I can sing a little better, and then I can retune everything as if I'm in double C again. So then I repeat the pattern, which is what I was trying to say before. So go to the 7th fret on the bass. And you can do this pretty quickly even on stage, and especially if I have a digital tuner, if I turn it on, you can, weather permitting and stuff, you can do it pretty quickly, especially if you're practiced and your knobs are nice and perfect. So I've just kind of quickly gone through and just raised it up one more time. That's all I would. You just have to you can't go any lower than, because the bottom of my vocal register, any lower than that on an instrument like this, the strings are going to get pretty wobbly at that point. And people who have much deeper voice than me, you'll hear them complain about that, and they might experiment with heavy gauge strings. Would be my first recommendation. If you wanted to tune lower than me, go to heavy gauge strings. Or, if you're just throwing money around, get a long neck banjo. People have some success with that. You can tune the long neck banjo with heavy strings really low before the strings start rattling. For some reason, this 2nd string didn't want to be up very high at all. Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks, Hugh. So, Polente had a question. Since I started playing nylons, I recognize my thumb is a lot louder than my index finger. I never made it out, never noticed it while playing with steel strings. Do you have any advice? Oh, yeah. The only thing you can do with that, yeah, you'll know, you probably can hear that. The thumb string, for me, people have different opinions about it. I like my thumb string to be dull and muted. And one way you can accomplish that, if you have a really good banjo that's in good shape, is by putting a 2nd string, a worn out 2nd string from your last set of strings. Instead of throwing that old 2nd string away, you can shorten it and use it for your new thumb string, and it will significantly dull the thumb string. It'll still stay in tune, but it'll be much duller sounding and much quieter than the other strings. The only caution I give you with that, I don't do that anymore. When I was a kid, I did that. But for some reason, I noticed on these side peg banjos, like we all have, that 2nd string in that thumb peg slot, it does tend to make the thumb peg fall out more often. So you may wind up running into thumb peg problems if you do that. So on a more fragile banjo, something that's a little more finicky, I probably may not be able to get away with it. If you have a really stout modern banjo, if you're playing a good time or an expensive banjo of any kind, you could probably get away with using a worn out second string, especially if you're down tuning. You can get away with it. If you're going to tune up to standard G, then I totally wouldn't recommend doing that at all. So that's one way that you can mute your thumb string, keep it dull. The other way is to maybe, so you talk about training your fingers. That's the obvious answer. That is going to come with time and effort. If you put effort into trying to get different fingers to do different things. So the first way to do that is to try to start emphasizing different individual notes. If you're very new to playing, if you're a beginner, focus on just playing individual notes. And once you're able to, you get that really good accuracy and you're able to strike individual notes with relatively guaranteed accuracy, whether you're looking at it or not. You don't have to look at your right hand, then you can start emphasizing individual notes. And then you start getting your own unique approach to a song or a tune, right? And once you get into that, then you'll be able to like train yourself. You'll hear yourself when you're playing. You can be like, okay, lay off the thumb. It's really coming through quite a bit. You may see that if you listen or watch enough of my material. You may notice me doing that. And some stuff, my thumb is just very lightly, kind of just. It's almost just checking time on the fifth string. Sometimes it's going there because I've trained myself, and I hope I've trained some of you to always keep that thumb string as your thumb's home. So no matter what you're doing, when your thumb is idle, it always automatically returns. It's kind of like a hammer on a machine gun or something. It's always recocking itself, and it wants to go there, whether you're using it or not. So sometimes you'll see me where my thumb is almost just mimicking. It's playing ghost notes on the thumb string. And I don't know. I kind of like that. I don't like a loud, sharp, ringing thumb string in the music so much. I'm trying to get the camera to refocus. Sorry, y'all. One person who has you'll hear Ralph Stanley. When Ralph Stanley did his like clawhammer albums, Ralph is a great banjo player, right? But he didn't really care about his clawhammer style so much. He just kind of kept it going. He had a real straightforward, driving clawhammer style. And Ralph, when he's playing clawhammer on that big resonator Gibson banjo he played, he catches the hell out of the thumb string with his thumb. I mean, he's almost leading. He's almost a thumb lead clawhammer player. I mean, the thing that you hear in those recordings more than anything is Ralph's thumb striking the thumb string. So, and the crowd is going absolutely apeshit for it. They fucking love it. So, and it is great. You can listen to those recordings, Ralph Stanley's live clawhammer recordings when he's a little bit younger and stuff. Some of those are just really awesome. But the thumb is like, the thumb string almost ruins it. Like if it wasn't Ralph Stanley, you'd be like, whoa, I can't even, it's like too much cowbell or something, right? So, it's like everything else. It's up to your personal taste, right? But yeah, I like to go easy on the thumb string. I like a muted thumb string. I'll play like ghost notes on. Let me see if I can try to. I don't know. I'm in a weird tuning. What am I in? Oh, whatever. But I don't need to sit here and play. You guys know what I sound like. I'm going to try to go to another question. I see they're stacking up here. I started playing with nylons. Okay. So Marilee says, ooh, lordy. How often do you change new strings? What is the indicator when you need to change them other than breakage? So yeah, other than breakage, the only indicator that I really care about is for me, let me just tell you what happens to me. I will never notice when the strings go bad, and they do go bad, and they go bad quicker than you might want. I never notice when it happens. What happens, the way I notice it, is I notice that I get less and less satisfied with my banjo playing. All of a sudden, I'll pick up the banjo and nothing sounds right, and I reset the bridge, and make sure it's all set up right. I get everything in tune, whatever. nothing sounds right. And even when it's in tune, the banjo just doesn't sound good to me. And that is a sort of a snobbish, taste that you acquire, I think, after years and years of listening and playing. Because when I was a young player, I would go on a set of strings for months and months until they broke, and I didn't notice that they sounded bad. But now I know it. I know it when it goes bad. I can hear it, and it's mainly I don't enjoy the music all of a sudden, and then I lay the banjo down and I wind up thinking, what the hell? Am I not good at the banjo anymore? Do I need to just give all this up? It was fun while it lasted, and I think no, no, no. It's you need to change your strings. That's what it always is, and this is something I'm trying to bring up more and more with new players too, because it does explain a lot of the slump. You might be surprised if you get in this slump where you just don't even want to play for weeks at a time or something, which will happen to you at some point. Um, Change the strings on your banjo if it's been a while, and because you'll notice when you're tuning up those new strings, wow, that sounds really nice and crisp. And this thing, man, this thing sounds better than I thought. It sounds better than I remember. And all of a sudden, you'll be playing again, and you'll realize it was just because the strings were dull. That happens to me all the time, and I think it must happen to other people. So, something to mention. When is it time to do it? It's up to you. That's really it. Nobody can tell you. Now, a professional musician, a guy who Jack Dillon in Asheville, North Carolina. He's a professional luthier, but he also plays in several bands, and he's a serious like jazz guitarist. And he told me that his band, they all make each other. They change strings once a week. So I thought that was crazy when he said once a week, but he was like, after a week, they're really, the quality of the tone and stuff is dropping off significantly. I'm like, whoa. So for me, I don't even think they don't even start sounding good until they've been on for a few days, and then he's throwing them away after a week. But what Jack does is he takes those old strings and winds them up, and then whenever he repairs an instrument or sells an instrument, he puts old strings on it. So he's not throwing them away. But anyhow, that's a dealer trick. Uh, what is the best height to set nylons at the 12th fret? Daggum. Mine, I can tell you right now, I mean, I don't have a ruler handy, but I've looked at a ruler enough that mine is at the 12th fret. It's over a 1/4 inch high at the 12th fret. It's over a 1/4 inch. It's probably in the neighborhood of 3/8 of an inch high at the 12th fret. Give you all some idea. Look how high that action is. You can probably see. My action on this banjo is quite high. So that's not ideal. You want it to be lower than that. And one reason my action is so high is my bridge is 5/8 of an inch tall, and I have no neck angle on this banjo, or very little. Any neck angle on this banjo is accidental. It's when I left the factory, it's supposed to be flat. Anyhow, so my action is a little higher than usual, and I've seen people on forums and stuff like complain, show actions like that, and say it's unplayable. But you've all seen me playing it with that action. What is the ideal? I think probably like for an antique banjo with no neck angle, probably a 1/4 inch is probably what you're looking for. I don't know the exact numbers off my head, and I should. But if you have a 1/2 inch tall bridge, which is ideal for these antique banjos with no neck angle, that's probably going to give you in the neighborhood of a 1/4 inch, or probably less than a 1/4 inch at the 12th fret. But I just want to show you, I mean, the reason I point out how high my action is just the action is not terribly important. I mean, this is within the playable range. I have a great time playing this banjo. This is my primary banjo. So a high action is not a big deal, especially once you get down here. You'll notice I'm barring a lot. I wish I could.
Hey, Cliff.
Yep.
Is the height there, Jim? I asked the question. Is in looking at other vintage instruments to purchase that's
Mhm.
one of the things I was trying to gauge is how you can tell if the neck's been reset or not. And they don't know. I was trying to get an idea of what height the steel strings are that they have to see if it's possible to
Yeah.
convert it to nylon.
If you should usually, I can pick up on clues in the advertisement or whatever. They'll say, oh, the neck has been repaired or whatever, or they'll brag about how low the action is and stuff. So if you have an antique 5-string banjo pre 1930 5-string banjo, you pretty much guaranteed it's not supposed to have a slick low action. It's supposed to have a kind of a high action. And that's one of the reasons people, like so many of them have been reset, is because people look at it and they think, oh, that action's too high. So the neck's out of whack. And then they tilt the neck back to give it, to lower the action. And what that does is it kind of ruins the banjo for traditional nylon string playing. At that point, the nylons are most likely going to rattle a lot more, and you're not going to get, it just reduces. And what actually happened on this banjo was that luthier, Jack Dillon, he's a professional trained luthier. If you take a banjo to him, that's what he will do to it. If the neck is not slightly angled back and he puts his little measuring stick on there and the action is higher than what he thinks it ought to be, he'll reset your neck, charge you the 250 or $300, whatever it is. So on this one, thank God, because this banjo has like a artillery shell for a rim. It's solid brass, nickel plated rim. So he decided he was not going to try to cut the rim and adjust the angle of the neck any more than what he could. So only thing he did was he put little tiny ebony shims. He went down in his shop and he cut these little tiny ebony shims, and he shimmed this banjo in several places to kind of to force it into a little bit of neck angle. So years down the road, when I did research and realized that I did not want him to do that, and I undid all that, and I was actually able to get this thing back close to factory condition. The neck is warped, and it does have some problems and stuff, but I was able to undo it on this banjo. Typically, what they'll typically do with the banjo is they'll change the position of where this bolt comes out, where this is. They'll take this all apart, they'll patch that hole, they'll drill a new hole in a wooden rim, and they'll just move the dowel slightly to give the neck angle. So you can spot it. The first thing to look for if you're looking to see if that's been done to a banjo is look at the rim inside and out, see where they've plugged the old hole. Because the old hole will be visible because it's not being covered anymore. You'll see the old hole where they plugged it. That's the first dead giveaway. If you can't see anything down there, you'll look for some kind of weird. Oh, my headphones, lordy. The other dead giveaway is you'll see a shim between the fingerboard and the rim. So you'll see, usually they'll stick a little thin piece of wood, a piece of veneer, or a piece of plastic, and they will stick it between the fingerboard and the rim, that little shim. That's the other dead giveaway. They're doing that to angle it back. A lot of times when you see that, a lot of times that's all they've done. A sort of half-assed luthier or a guy who doesn't want to mess up the instrument, or a gal, they'll just shim it in between the fingerboard and the rim. And you can actually you can just pull that shim out and kind of get it back to normal. So it's weird. I wish it was more cut and dry. I wish it was easier to deal with. But it's been done to thousands and thousands of antique banjos at this point. And if you bring it up to people who sell banjos and play banjos at like the old time, music festivals, if you bring it up, they're very hostile to anybody trying to push back against the practice of altering the necks on all these antique banjos. They really want to do it because they want to play with steel strings. They want to play clawhammer. So they really want to do it, and they'll tell you multiple reasons of why it's a good idea to do. Anyhow, I just think you shouldn't do it, but whatever. Because it basically makes the style of music that I want to play, little things that I do, become extinct if I'm forced to play on a steel string banjo with a steep neck angle. There's certain things that I like to do that I can't quite get out of that banjo. So to me, it's kind of a small tragedy when that happens. But I don't know. And what else is anything else on your mind, Jim, with that?
I just have been looking at them, and it's hard to tell from pictures long distance, and it's like I've seen where some people, they'll take the neck out and sand the heel down so that it gives it that back tilt, which you
Yeah,
can't do anything about that. A shim you can take care of, but
yeah.
so I just just any tips of how you evaluate that long distance.
Yeah, the only when they shave the heel down like that, I mean, the only thing you can do is do a very neat, precise job of re-shimming it on the back and building the heel back. So it can be. I mean, anything can be fixed. The good news is that a well trained, like a good enough luthier can fix anything. So even their own repairs they can they can undo. But yeah, these by the time you do that to the instrument, it's just a total. It's been hacked to death, and you've broken all these natural points of contact inside the wood, and it's never going to sound the way that it did. Boo-hoo. So whatever. But yeah, I feel your pain, Jim. Welcome to the world of trying to find an unaltered antique banjo. Even
Hey, I
this one.
just want to again thank you for the course here before I mute myself. It's been a real pleasure, and you're not only a good technician, but you're a good teacher. So it's really inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I'm doing my best. So, Joe has a question here about how do you decide to match the vocal note to a single note or to match it to a chord? I'll look for you. Joe, are you in here?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Let me just add you up here. So I don't understand.
Um, I guess I'm trying to think. Like I've been kind of just trying to stay on the cuckoo,
Mhm.
and you know how like I think I might be messing up. Like 'cause you can go, but like when they're singing it, like I'm watching other people, and they're like singing over that part. So I don't know how much I should follow the lyric note or go to just chord and just singing it over the chord, like for rhythm of song.
I mean, so the short answer to that, I was just talking to somebody about this, but I guess it wasn't any of you, I guess, but the short answer is to avoid chording and to sort of stay away from chords as much as possible. If that's what you're talking about, like whether to go into like a chord shape or something. Traditionally, the reason you get into that open tuning is to avoid making a chord shape. So try to, whenever possible, I try to just keep one finger down on the fingerboard at a time. I'm not sure if this is what you're getting at. I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around it. But when you're talking about chords, I would say first of all, first thing that comes to my mind is traditionally, these big, chord shapes and stuff is something that comes along later. So in the music that I'm trying to play, I typically avoid chord shapes. I will retune the banjo to an open chord to where I'm only, using one finger, maybe two fingers. Uh, and other than that, if you're having trouble figuring out where to line up your words to the song,
Yeah.
to me, that's just, I don't know, that always just comes to me naturally because you know, put away the banjo completely. And like, let's say you're just driving to the grocery store, driving back and forth to work every day. Whenever you're alone or something, sing that damn song a cappella, unaccompanied, and get the rhythm in your body, not just in your fingers and your brain trying to play it, but get it to where you're driving down the road, or maybe you're walking through the woods or doing whatever you do, taking a walk. Sing the damn song to yourself and really get it in your body. And to me, when I'm working it out, I will naturally just I'm gonna pick it out, and the way that I learn the tune is I pick out the words on the banjo, the songster method, right? So to me, it just comes. The way that I build the way that I build my relationship with the song is I build it off of the words. So to me, it just comes. That's just what I'm doing from the get go. So I don't really know how to help you with that, Joe, other than just to encourage you to keep trying and to keep focusing on, you're playing the melody and you're singing it as you're playing it. I don't really know how else to. I don't know.
I guess I was trying to wonder like when to throw that, the ditty.
Oh, the ring,
in.
ring, dig a ding ding. So you're singing over the the cuckoo, and then that the deep part is when you're singing. The high part, you're not singing anything over that. You're playing it whenever you want. You're saying, yeah, I see what you mean. The high part, what you need to, yeah, because you don't want. Are you saying that it sounds too repetitive to just keep playing that ditty in between each verse?
Yeah, like when to cut off, like when I, oh the
Yeah,
cuckoo, like diddly do, and then, but like also to keep that, I guess that's messing me up. And then, um, I guess I was thinking of the bum ditty all the time, like how to like sing, jump, and keep the rhythm
yeah.
going.
That's a
So like,
it's more of a challenging piece. That little ditty that you're talking about, the ring ding dig a ding ding, the damn, you go right into that. It's
yeah,
uh, oh the cuckoo, she's a fine bird, and she sings as she flies, and then she never hollers cuckoo till the 4th day of July. Ring ding 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 dig a ding ding, ring ding 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 dig a ding ding, ring ding. You go right into it. So it's almost like you feel like after you finish the verse, you want me, when I play it, I want to kind of hang out and just do another little beat in between and then go into it, but you don't. Part of what gives that tune its weird feeling, it's kind of urgent to me. That tune always sounded like a lightning storm. Like I always pictured like a nighttime and it's a lightning storm outside. And of course, the first time I ever heard it was like a 60-something-year-old George Gibson with a little bit of liquor in him playing it at his house, and it was amazing. And it reminded me, I don't believe it was storming outside, but the music gave me this picture of a lightning storm. What gives it that urgent kind of, holy shit, what is this song, what's going on here, is that you go right into that ditty, right at, you bite your word off, you kind of bite that
yeah,
verse off right at the end, and you jump, your hand goes right into that ring ding ding, and yeah, the audience, the viewer, the listener is like, no matter how many times they've heard that, they're kind of not ready for it. It's like, whoa, it's exhilarating. There's something about that tune. Um, all I can say, Joe, is you just got to keep trying. You got to keep working with it, and don't hang out and give it like a rest. Don't rest in between that verse and sliding into that. My other piece of advice with that is try to work up another part. So instead of that ditty, try to do the same notes as what the ditty is, but pick it out and just leave the big exciting brush out, because then the listener is expecting that big brush and you don't go into it and you go into something else. Your left hand's basically doing the same thing, but your right hand picks out that little melody. Anyhow, you could look up my version or George Gibson's version. There's a great version of George Gibson that everybody should look up. It's actually doesn't have the word cuckoo in the title. It's called My Old Banjo. So you can type in on YouTube George Gibson My Old Banjo. This friend of mine filmed him, and he's playing cuckoo, and you can see his embellishments. George doesn't always go to that big exaggerated brush ditty that you're talking about. Sometimes you're expecting in the section where he should go to that brush, he's doing a different ditty, which is kind of cool.
yeah.
My other suggestion.
Um,
Anything else on your
Could I add
mind?
something to that, Cliff?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, we got Mr.
That was Blaine.
Where the hell? Oh, here you are. I just want to make sure. Okay.
Hey. I was gonna say, just to add to that, what I've done in the past before is sort of, if you have some way to record yourself, to just record the way you play it, and then sing over your own recording so you can just focus on that.
Yeah.
and then eventually marry the two.
Yeah, that's a
Nice.
good idea. Yeah, using all these like devices and stuff that we have to record yourself. That's another thing too, is a lot of improvements that I've made over the years in my own playing have come from recording myself. Like early on as a kid, I had a tape recorder, and I would record on this one and just keep re-recording over and over again. I would record every song that I knew on the tape, and then I got to play it back. And when the first time you hear it, you hate it, and you keep playing and you keep singing, and you get more used to hearing it yourself, and you like it. And then you can develop an almost objective ear of your own playing, which when you first hear yourself play and sing, it's almost unimaginable. You can't bear to hear it. But if you can try to develop an objective ear for your own playing when you're hearing it in a recording, don't just hate it just because it's you. One way I did that was I would picture somebody else's face singing my music, and if it sounded good, thinking it was somebody else, I'd say okay, it's good. Anyhow, we're getting weird into the weeds here, but the point is use these recording devices. It's a great tool, especially filming yourself. You don't ever have to show anybody these videos ever, but you can film yourself on a phone easily, and then look back at it and listen to it in private, and you'll see things about your posture. Like right now, like I'm sort of slumped over. Like most banjo players, we kind of want to slump over and where people are playing like this and stuff. Over time, that's not the best way to sit. Think about your posture and stuff. Like one reason, in videos, I try to square my shoulders, keep the peg head about level with my shoulder. The peg head's way up here or way down here. It's kind of not comfortable over years. So keep the peg head about there, keep it square. You might want to keep the banjo in your lap like this. This is fine. That bothers me, so I keep it over my right leg. Banjo on my knee. Everything keeps slipping out of tune. So certain things like that, you'll notice just your posture and stuff, with ways you can improve. And improved posture, the way you're approaching the banjo will improve the way you're singing. If you're sort of slumped over and bent over like most old time banjos want to be, it doesn't help you sing. It's better for your singing if your vocal cords are straight and you're projecting forward. You got your shoulders squared up, and you look a little more presentable. Things like that, So that comes from video recording, but also you'll see the way your hand looks. You can see. One thing I noticed when I look at a lot of video of banjo players, two finger mostly, and like overhand clawhammer banjo players, and especially with the clawhammer banjo players, I see a lot of tension in the thumb. I see a lot of people that kind of hold they hold their thumb, at like an angle when they're playing, and they hold their hand like too flat. I see a lot of this. People kind of playing like this, and to me that's just way too flexed. So you need to just let your thumb just kind of rest how it wants to. Let these fingers curl naturally and rest how they want to. I think in the course, I even describe the way to get the proper, hand stance is to just, you can hold your hand out flat and then relax your fingers. And that's the hand that you play with. That's the comfortable down picking claw hammer playing style. You notice the shape of my hand doesn't really change at all. So it is really just flat. Relax your fingers, and that is the hand that you play, down picking banjo with. That's the most natural, relaxing thing. Anyhow, I got way off into the weeds there. So Dan Isliger said, "I'm wondering if jam sessions are traditional or if they came out of the 1960s old time revival. If they're traditional, were they common?" So Dan, of course, people have jammed forever. I haven't studied the actual terminology of jam, the word jam, its usage, but I suspect that it was introduced to traditional like banjo old time music in the 60s. That sounds like something that would have been introduced in the 1960s. But of course, people have, you could argue, a banjo player and a fiddle player in 1832 or whatever is a jam. They just didn't call it that. So for me to say that people didn't jam, I wouldn't say that. But the way our concept of jamming, when if you type in jam in Google, or you go to a festival and you go to a formal jam where it's people sitting in a circle, and there's no limit on the, I mean, just a ton of people maybe, or these large groups and stuff. Obviously, that's clearly something it's become a tradition. It's modern tradition now, but it's a contrived tradition. It's something that was created on purpose. And of course, obviously, the reason they created it was to encourage group playing. To create. It's intended to be an opening, like a safe space, like an opening environment for new people to be attracted. You see a big group of people, they're in harmony, sharing fellowship with each other, making hopefully good music. Sometimes it is good. And it's supposed to invite people in and stuff. It's a product of the festivals. And of course, the formal folk festivals really started in the 1930s, when you had like federal money that was getting dumped, and state money getting dumped into like folk art and stuff for the first time. So that big jam circle kind of thing, that may be a tradition that goes back to the 30s. In fact, you can see video footage from the 30s. There's a famous clip I'm thinking of. It's President Roosevelt, in 1930 something, and he's at a big festival somewhere. I think they're in D.C. And he has a huge band of, I think it's all these fiddle players and banjo players. He has a huge band of them. You guys have probably seen this film clip. And he has them play a tune for him. I forget what tune he has them play. And they play the tune, and it's like 20 banjo players and 30 fiddlers and stuff. So, and it was at a festival. I mean, they're basically doing the jam there. So it goes back to at least the 30s, but it's clearly a festival tradition. And the stuff that we think about, there's the kids that have grown up in the jam circle tradition now. That's clearly coming from the 60s and stuff, and maybe even later, when you start seeing that at folk festivals with these great big, I don't even know. That's interesting to note. I'd like to know more about that. I haven't thought too much about that. But of course, short answer is I would poo-poo the jams, because the jams really, to me, they're not traditional. I mean, if you think of traditional music, it's typically one musician, sometimes two, sometimes three, but typically it's one musician providing music, and it's to accompany people who are dancing, or a song. That's really the core of the tradition. And then people occasionally gathering together, and so the concept of a jam. It's like, why would you get together and jam if you weren't getting together and having a dance or something like that? So I think any kind of formal gathering that's truly like what we would consider like a vernacular, organic tradition, for lack of a better term, those gatherings are going to be for dances, and where work is being done, right? Like you hear about the bean stringings and the corn shuckings and stuff that went on, where music was provided to encourage people to attend to help work. So those gatherings are like dances and stuff, or work parties. They're not really gathering for a formal jam. I can't really picture that happening in a truly traditional setting. So my short answer is like, no, they're not traditional. Cecilia says, how do you keep track of the songs you know, the tunings, the origins? How do you catalog them, or do you have an amazing memory? I don't think I have an amazing memory. I think I have probably, maybe I'm blessed with an above average memory, probably have an average memory. I forget a lot of things. But to me, I really love the material, so that's why I remember it. And I would also, like, whenever you guys bring up something and I don't know, it's like, whoa, you should know that, Cliff. I don't know. I feel I don't know. I feel like I should. I feel obligated to, as like a, I don't know, keeper of the flame or whatever, to try to keep it burning, right? So I gotta know this stuff, but ultimately it's like a selfish interest that drives it. So how do you keep track of songs you know? People start out with lists, and that's a good idea. I recommend doing that. We're all literate. We all have pen and paper. Keep a journal. Keep a little diary. When I was a kid and first learning, and well into my adulthood, I kept journals. I still have some of them, where I wrote down every tuning that I knew. I would write down the tuning, and then I'd write down every song I knew in that tuning, and then I'd write the next tuning, and every song I knew in that tuning, next page, next page, next page. And you get a kick out of building up that library, you know. And I do the same with each song. When I learned a new song, and this is really good. It helps me learn a song if I write it out by hand. Get a piece of paper, open a journal, write the song out. Then you see visually how it's structured, and you really memorize it that way. So I do definitely recommend doing that, especially early on. So for me, just eventually it becomes too much to catalog, and you've got books full of tunes that you don't care about anymore. You haven't played them in 5 or 10 years, so you give up on writing things down. Now I only just have scattered lists of songs that people want me to perform or teach or both or whatever. So I don't do that anymore, but I recommend doing that early on. So Edward asks, if we decide to use nylons on one of our banjos, would it not be better to get a bridge with the same string spacing as our other banjos? As far as for muscle memory and stuff like that, it's easy to make mistakes. And a lot of those early traditional bridges have very narrow spacing. So first off, I got to recommend the Morley bridge. That's what I use. It's from Joel Hooks. It's the Morley J. Morley bridge. It has a nice wide spacing, so I recommend that bridge. If you're going back and forth, a bridge that matches the spacing as your other banjos. To me, it doesn't really matter, honestly. I can pick up another banjo that has a very narrow, like the Gibbs bridge, for example. Stewart made a bridge called Gibbs. That was a fake name. Long story. Had very narrow spacing. And it was for like speed picking, like 3-finger, like very fast playing, maybe with picks. I can play on that bridge. It's not comfortable. I don't like to necessarily play on a Gibbs bridge, but I can. And I can pick up any standard, bluegrass banjo that somebody has, and I can play on it. But I really want a Crow spacing bridge or the Morley spacing. Or even I can do wider. Once it gets wider than Crow or Morley, it starts to get a little too wide for me. But just try not to be. Maybe don't worry about it so much. You pick up another banjo. It's got different, because they have different spacing at the nut too. And there's not, we don't think about that, but some of them have different spacing at the nut as well. Yeah, it's not easy to change out. So my advice is just to not worry about that so much. Have different bridges on different banjos. You could have 8 banjos laying around your house like I used to, and you could either have them with 8 identical bridges with the same spacing, or you could have them with 8 different bridges with 8 different string spacings, and pick them up and play them. And who cares if you miss and stuff like that? But keep doing it, and you'll develop the ability to pick up different things and just get better music out of them. I don't know. But ultimately, Ed, it's up to you. I mean, if you want to do that, do that, Oh, and so Richard says, do you change a full set of strings when you only just need to change 1 or 2? That gets into, it's just ultimately like you're gonna just change 1 string and then keep an open pack of strings around and then slowly change them back. I'll do that if I break just 1 string. I'll change the 1 string and I'll keep that open pack. I'll throw it in the case. But once I break another string on that banjo, I will typically then just get rid of I'll put a whole new pack on once they just get like that. But if you're using gut strings and stuff, in the olden days, the old timers, strings were much more valuable because you either bought gut strings from a catalog or a music store and you paid by the yard and it was pretty expensive and they didn't last long, or you made your own strings. And there's all kinds of accounts of people twisting horsehair and making their own banjo strings, which they then waxed with beeswax and so forth. So, traditionally people would break a string and they would change that string. They would only change a string when it broke because the strings were expensive. If the pot is attached a bit lower than the neck, does that accomplish the same thing as neck angle? William, I guess in some ways it does. In some ways it doesn't, because in some ways, a true angled neck it's attaching to the rim, differently and stuff like that. If you've just kind of got a sort of a stooped, neck that's a little bit lower than the rim, I don't know. It's probably doing some of the same stuff, but not. I don't know. You might want to adjust that. First of all, I could say I don't like that. I want, ideally, you want this, this is pretty close. Ideally, you want the top of that straining hoop to be level with your fingerboard. They've aided you in doing that in a lot of these banjos by they've scooped out the tension hoop, to accommodate you a little bit better. But you don't really want tension hoop sticking up between the neck and the fingerboard, because when you get down to do these crazy frets down here, it's going to start bottoming out. So Mike says, I have a line in Healy that I've cleaned up. I've changed the bridge to a Morley, changed it to Labella 17. It doesn't sound right to me. Mike, I'm going to pull you up, Mike. You still with us, Mike? Mike Stinson.
There.
Oh, howdy. I'm going to pull you up, Mike. It still doesn't sound right. Do you think it may be because the neck has been reset? Often that will... Does it have neck angle?
Don't believe the neck has been reset. It just doesn't sound right. I put the Labella 17s on it with a J. Morley and a Renaissance head from Smacula, and it's got the original tailpiece on it.
What kind of tailpiece are you running?
It's the original.
Oh yeah.
On the Lions and Healy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can
So
see
yeah, I see that. Yeah, that's yeah. So you don't want to. I've got a similar. I think mine is like a copy of that. So that's kind of a nice tailpiece. It's not the best tailpiece. Ideally, we want. I mean, if you probably want to keep that tailpiece on the banjo. If you didn't, I would suggest getting a more modern adjustable tailpiece that you can press the strings down behind the bridge. That'll make it sound a lot better. What?
It just sounds really plunky.
To me, Mike, that sounds like a damn Lion and Healy. You can experiment with the plunky. I don't know. The plunky's cool. You can experiment with different head. I can tell you right now, a lot of the hot shot banjo pickers. They're going back to just plain frosted Remo heads, because people really starting to people are kind of getting the picky, real snobby, picky people. We're getting away from the fiber skin heads, and even those Renaissance heads. I think they're okay, but I do prefer just a plain frosted head now. It sounds a little better to me. I've had, so you might experiment with a different head on it. It may be that you just don't like that head, because that's the best strings and bridge you can get. Also, you could experiment with the heavier strings, so you can go to get the Nile gut strings. What's going on with that?
We had the reds on them, the Aquila reds on them, and I was told that they wouldn't fit in this.
Yeah. Whoa. My dog just ran out. So right now I've got regular old Aquila 6B, the Nile Gut 6B, not the red series. So if you get Aquila 6B, they will fit in the Morley. But the 6B is some of their lightest string, might be their lightest Nile Gut that they make. So anything heavier, like the 5, their numbering system is a nightmare. The 5B is actually heavier than the 6B, and the 7B is heavier than the 6B too. So 6B Aquila will fit that Morley bridge. So you could experiment with that. The other thing is you can go to Labella's website. This is what we all should be doing, because Labella makes better strings. They're a better company. You can go to the Labella website and you can order individual nylon strings in any diameter you want. So that's what more serious people are doing. And there's another material called fluorocarbon, and There's a company that's offering fluorocarbon strings in any diameter you want. I don't know what the name of that company. Anyhow, you can get any diameter strings you want from Labella. So that's probably my other. So my suggestions to you: experiment with heavier strings. Try the Aquila Nilegut 6B. That's what I have on my Morley bridge. So that should fit. That will fit. And if you still don't like the way it's sounding, then I would put a new head on it. Get just a plain frosted head on it. Well, what kind of sound do you want out of it?
I'm not. I've got a modern banjo made by Bart Reeder, and it's more sharp, and it just
Yeah.
it just sounds real plunky.
Yeah, plunky and dull. I mean, it's sort of a, it's sort of just like a mid-range line and Healy, and that's probably probably always going to sound kind of plunky and stuff. But if you want to really, the only way to probably really get it to sound a little bit hotter would be to experiment with some heavier strings and a heavier head, like just the frosted head, or get an actual animal skin, get an actual calf skin head. That would make it sound better. But yeah,
it's pretty much it's going to sound like it does. I mean, I'm not going to get. Okay, I was wondering about that because I really like the sound of my Bart Reeder banjo, and then I thought, well, I can get into this claw hammer, and I tried everything on here that I could think of, but without changing the tailpiece, and I think I did like the reds, the reds on it better than these 17s. So.
Yeah, the 17s are light. They're real light and floppy, and they may not be giving you the best. That's the closest to what would have been on that banjo in the 1800s, but it's not the best sound for what we want. So yeah, I would try the Nilegut 6B. That'll probably help you a lot. You'd be surprised. I mean, how it may sound drastically better, but ultimately it's a plunky old line, and Healy, it's a cheaper one. They're kind of. It is what it is, I just try to enjoy it for what it is,
I'm trying to make a silk purse out of a cow's ear.
Yeah, exactly. Ear. Yeah, you got a bit of a sow's ear there, which is perfectly good sow's ear, but it ain't gonna be a silk purse. I mean, you can also people mute the banjo. I've got this crazy Joel Hooks mute in mine that can do vast different things. Excuse me, to the way the banjo sounds.
My wife picking up a small pillow that I can put inside of mine, and sometimes I like hearing it better with the pillow in it than
stuff a handkerchief in there. A great mute is a piece of wine cork. You can cut a piece of wine cork and get it the right height, and you stick it just like this mute is under between the skin and the dowel, and a wine cork actually makes a really nice tonal kind of mute. It makes it a little quieter, but it makes it sound a lot better too. And if you stick that wine cork up here behind the bridge, like how I had this mute positioned, that improves the tone quite. Put pressure behind the bridge, either from the top with the tailpiece or from the bottom with a mute, and it does improve the tone. It gives it more of that tight, that pleasing banjo sound. I don't know how else to describe it.
I like the cork. Wine cork, so I'll give that a try.
Yeah, a lot of us have drawers filled with wine corks, right? Let's see. I would guess. Okay, it seems.
I wanted to say something on that real quick, if I could. One thing I noticed was whenever I would stuff the back of one of my banjos and it would sound better, to me that almost meant like the head might not be tight enough.
Yeah.
I've got a drum dial and I got it up to about 85. I didn't know about going any tighter than that. I'm all the way around. I've moved it all the way around and checked it at various brackets.
Okay.
Sounds like you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been listening to you guys and trying to do everything I can to make it sound better, but maybe it's, like you said, it's just what it is, and it's pretty much going to be a wall hanger, I guess.
Yeah, well, maybe keep fiddling with it, let it be something to experiment with. But they're nice wall hangers too.
it looks a lot better than it did when I got it. It was black. I thought the pot was actually black. It was so corroded or whatever.
Oh yeah, it was just covered in grime.
Yeah, I took a light double-aught steel wool to it and very lightly went all over it and cleaned it up, and it looks halfway decent now, I think.
Looks like it just came from the factory. Yeah.
So maybe I'll look into maybe changing the like you said, change the head and change the tailpiece to a more modern tailpiece to see if I can get a better sound up.
If you can get an adjustable tailpiece, you can get you can spend like $70-80 and get a really nice Kirshner tailpiece, Kershner Kirshner tailpiece. That's a good old-timey adjustable tailpiece. You can crank it down behind the bridge. Probably have it on your something like that on your other banjo. That'll make the banjo sound a lot better if you put pressure behind the bridge.
Okay, I'll give that a try.
All right, Mike.
We'll keep working.
So,
Thanks.
Mary Lee, you had you're saying what are the differences and characteristics of string weights, medium, heavy, and light? So, I mean, there's a lot. Ultimately, the reason that I have Nile Gut 6Bs on here is because they're the right weight that I want. So if I put Labella number 17 nylons on this banjo, those are a light gauge nylon string. If I put those on this banjo, they're, for whatever reason, because there's less mass in the string, it's a narrower string, it's much more wobbly. So you get, it's like when you're picking it, especially down here, you get a much more, like, this is pretty wobbly already. And if these were Labella number 17 nylons, they'd be even more just mushy, wobbly all over the place. And it's personal preference. Some people like to play, like I play on a pretty wobbly, loose string. You know, they're pretty loose. And I like that. I don't like them tuned up to G or whatever anyhow. So it's hard to explain. There's really a lot of different characteristics and a lot of different factors that go into why somebody settles on, I like this type of string and this weight. And the short answer is that you're going to arrive at those decisions after you've been playing for a while. You'll experiment with some strings and you'll say, like, if your strings are buzzing all the time and they're mushy and stuff, you go up to a medium gauge string. So I would consider what I've got on here now like a medium gauge nylon because it's the Aquila 6B. It's a little bit thicker string. They have even at a lower tuning, they keep a little bit more tension in them because it's a thicker, heavier string. So you get more resistance when you're playing, and some people like a lot of resistance, So anyhow, that's the reason I do this. If my strings were still kind of wobbly and buzzing a couple places and I wasn't perfectly happy with it, if I wanted more resistance when I'm picking, I would go to Aquila 5B or 7B. Any of the other Aquilas are the Nile Guts are much heavier. I would go to any other Nile Gut that's even heavier, and I would get a tougher string that doesn't bend as much and has more resistance. Ultimately, it's like how much resistance is the string giving you. So that's, I don't know, I could go on and on. But that's ultimately the difference. I mean, the light gauge string is it's a narrower piece of string, narrower piece of wire. The medium is a little thicker. And then the heavy gauge stuff is a heavier thing. Very few people seem to use heavy gauge strings. I've experimented with heavy gauge strings. I don't like them. Nylon banjos, typically, like I said, people who are using Nile Gut, it's like all heavy gauge. So those people are using heavy gauge. But steel string heavy gauge is something that's not really used hardly at all. It puts a lot of tension on the banjo. Not many people do that. Probably some bluegrass players and people who down tune a lot. Long neck banjo players, I don't know. But yeah, you just got to experiment with stuff. I don't know. Bling. Well, y'all, we went for over an hour. If everybody's good with that, I've got other stuff on the docket today, and I need to wrap up this meeting. If everybody's satisfied with that, I'll wrap it up, and I'll see y'all around. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you, Clifton.
Thank
Really, really
Thank you
wonderful
very much.
class.
Cool. Awesome.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay, everybody had a good one. Take care.